So to start the rebuild on the front end of the head here, we're going to start with the impulse wheel on the intake camshaft. It has a little notch here, so it lines up just like that. Okay, and then we're going to have a thrust spacer. Looks like this, and I can actually tell where this was on last, so I'm just going to match it up. And then we have three studs, and one side's bigger than the other, so that's the side that goes into the impulse wheel and the thrust spacer. Okay, there's one. And these are going to be 15 foot-pounds. And I'm pretty sure this is a 10mm. Yep. Alright. Let's get 15 foot-pounds on here. Okay, so far so good. So now you need to use the timing chain tensioner tool. BMW calls it special tool 114220. Basically this is going to screw in to the chain tensioner hole, and we're going to tighten this piston bolt down so that it just touches the guide, but we're not going to pre-tension it yet. So back it off here. Okay, so you can just see the chain move. I go back and forth right there. So once I see the guide, once it touches the guide, that's as far as I'm going to go with it. Okay, so next we're going to insert the locating studs, and this is going to be 15 foot-pounds. And these are going to be 12 millimeter. Okay, so these go in inside of here, just like this. Okay, this is going to be, what did I say, 15 foot-pounds. And that's it. Okay, now I'm going to put in the secondary chain tensioner. So we're going to have 3 bolts up top, 1 on the front. Wipe this off. Okay, so this sits on these 3 holes here. It's going to be a short bolt. And then we'll have 2 mediums, and then there's a long bolt for the front. So here's our short bolt. Okay, here's a medium. The other medium-sized bolt, and that leaves the long bolt for the front. These are going to be 10s, 10 millimeter. And the Bentley manual does not say, but I'm going to go with 15 foot-pounds on these as well. That 15 seems like a lot. I'm probably only putting about 8 or 9. Set it to 9 foot-pounds. See what this, yeah. Okay, so I've got my chain tensioner on here. I went ahead and put the other tensioner down here, the tensioning tool, and you can see it. So once you get it about finger tight, that's as far as you need to go. And the arrow should be straight across to the top of the cylinder head, so that's good. Okay, next I'm going to go ahead and put on the exhaust camshaft splined sleeve, and you can see this has a short side, a long side. The short side is the side that we want to put in here, and you also have to line it up with the groove, the big wide groove there. So it's going to go this way and just center these bolt holes. Okay. And then next we will put on this spline shaft here. It's also keyed. It's only one way it can go, so you have to kind of line the gaps up. And there it goes. So try to keep the bolt holes centered. Try it about right there. Okay, so from there we're going to go ahead and put on the intake and the exhaust sprockets and the chain. And to do that, to line it up properly, you need to use this tool here. It's a jig, and I'll show you how it works. So you just lay your sprockets in there, and this will slide so that that's lined up just the way you want it. So now we'll take this off and just put it right on, just like that. Okay. So now we'll go ahead and put the other spline shaft on the intake. And again, it's keyed one way. There's only one way you can do it. And you're supposed to have 1 millimeter of splines sticking out on this one. Okay, so next we'll put the spring plate on the intake here. It actually says front on it, so you want to put it on with the word front out there. And let's go ahead and put the mounting bolts. These are inverted Torx bolts for our sprocket here on the exhaust cam. And you tighten them down finger tight and then back it off a half turn. So you want them loose. Finger tight and back it off a half turn. Now we'll put the thrust spacer on the exhaust cam. It's this guy here. And then we'll install the spring plate. And it also has an F for front. Just make sure it goes to the front. And then we'll put our impulse wheel on, and it has an arrow as well. It's right there. It's kind of hard to see, but it is there, and it will point to the top surface of the cylinder head as well. Okay. It's got 3 nuts. And we have 3 nuts left for the intake cam. Okay, now I'm going to pull this out. This should be about right there. I'm going to pull this out as far as it'll go. There it goes. I think that's as far as it'll go, right there. Okay. We got the primary chain preloaded. We're going to preload the camshaft spring plate. You just press in with your fingers, tighten these nuts. Okay, so that's preloaded now. Okay, so now we're going to put the Vanos bracket tool on the front here. There it goes. Okay, so that's got that in the right position now. Now we can tighten it down. So we'll use the we'll do the screws on the camshaft impulse wheel. It's going to be 44 inch-pounds. Okay, for the M7 torque screws, the Bentley manual calls for 15 foot-pounds on the sprocket assembly. Alright. And then for the mounting nuts on the sprocket assembly is going to be 8 foot-pounds, which should be a 10 millimeter. Okay. Alright, so we'll put the tension on there. And now we're going to remove the flywheel locking pin, and we're going to remove the camshaft locking tool. Actually, I don't think I torqued these down, did I? Yeah. Let's go ahead and torque these. That's 8 foot-pounds as well. So now I'm going to take the flywheel locking pin out, and we're going to remove the camshaft locking tool. Okay. Take a 22 millimeter socket, place on the front pulley there. Okay, the flywheel pin is out. The engine is free to rotate. Well, so we're going to turn it around one time. I guess one turn for the camshafts. It'd be 2 turns at the bottom. And we want to just see if it comes right back to top dead center. Which should be right about there. So the way to test that is to put your camshaft tool, your locking tool, back in place. And your flywheel, you can lock it down. Okay, so the flywheel is locked into place. Just to go the other way, just to make sure that pin is in there. Okay. So now, when we put it back in, if you look at the tool here, it's actually flush where it's supposed to be on the exhaust side. On the intake side, you've got about 1 millimeter or 2 space here. The Bentley manual has a side note that says, due to flexible sprocket design, Vanos unit tolerances and play in the Vanos splines, when the camshaft timing is set correctly, the intake side of the special tool may be up to 1 millimeter above the surface of the cylinder head. This is normal. Reassemble engine, otherwise reset camshaft timing as described. So if the exhaust side of the tool is not flush with the head, camshaft timing is incorrect. You have to reset the camshaft timing. If the exhaust side is flush, you're good. If the intake side has a little gap right there, you're okay too. It says to go ahead and reassemble the engine. So I'm going to go with the Bentley manual. So now I'll go ahead and remove the timing tool for the Vanos. And now everything is right where it needs to be. All I have to do now is take out the tensioning tool here and go ahead and put the chain tensioner back in. So here's your chain tensioner. It's just a spring. It fills with oil. So now I'm going to put the Vanos unit back on the front of the cylinder head, and before I do that I want to clean this surface. I'm just using a real fine grit sandpaper. The Bentley manual says to put a 3M bonding agent, a thin coat on the surface, so I'm going to go with some RTV. This is going to be the Permatex high temperature red RTV silicone. Said to apply a thin coat. Okay, put the gasket on. And then we'll put the Vanos unit back into place. Check the surface here. There we go. So this is an M6 nut. It's going to be 89 inch-pounds, which is 10 Newton meters. 7.38 foot-pounds on these nuts. .38 foot-pounds. Okay, so this goes on first. One more nut to put on it. Hides up under the corner here. Okay. Now let me get my torque wrench. So 7.38 foot-pounds. So it's 10 millimeter. That's all we're going to right there. one actually has 2 nuts on it. It's a bigger stud here. See what size this one is. Looks to be a 13 millimeter. Oh, wrong socket. Okay, so bracket goes on here. Take this off. I'm not going to tighten that down just yet. May need to move that a little bit later. What I'm going to do now is put the set screws in, and these are going to be T30 Torx, and they are reverse threaded, so you have to turn counterclockwise. Tighten. Okay, and the torque on these is going to be 10 Newton meters, which converts to foot-pounds, 7.38 foot-pounds. Here's the problem. My torque wrench does not do reverse. Should be about right there. Does not work in reverse, so just be careful not to over tighten these. It's only 7.38 foot-pounds. Get a small extension for that. Okay, now I'll just put the plugs back in, and I'm not replacing any of the O-rings on these. I may revisit the Vanos later and do a rebuild on it, but for now I'm just replacing everything as it is. So I've got some bent pliers that I like to use for these. And they just pop right in. And then finally, we have these plugs. Okay, so these are going to be H8. These are hex bolt plugs. Okay, and these are going to be tightened to 37 foot-pounds. Get the other one here. And all that's left to do now is plug in the electrical connectors for each solenoid.